And welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Buckeye Boggs. That's the wild man, Chris Wilds over there. And Chris, we are starting our previews for the Big Ten earlier than we've ever done before. We have 18 teams in the Big Ten now. Last year we got to start this in the middle of June.
Hmm.
It's June 2nd as of this recording. So we're gonna start uh, uh, breaking down the teams and
Hmm.
positions and creating our for the second year our first and second team all Big Ten preseason rankings and everything like that. So we're gonna start with running backs tonight. If those of you who've listened to our show that we did up the previous Sunday, JR, myself, and Chris gave our top 10 running backs going into the season. We took all of those lists that we made, we put them into a formula, bada boom, bada bing, they average out. And here is our average top 10. And I'll be honest, because of how different some of us were, some people really moved around on this list. I think you're going to be happy with it, Chris. And I think now that I'm a week removed from the list and have done some thinking about it, I think that this list might actually be incredibly accurate with what probably we all thought, with not only how they've done in the past, the team they are on, and how good the team might be, but also how we project them out a little bit. So this will be very interesting. Should cause some good debate. So if you're ready, I'm ready. We can start with number 10.
Let's go.
All right, here we go. At number 10, we have Kayron Lynch Adams. Of course, he is a transfer from UMass. Last year, he had 1,157 yards and 12 touchdowns for the Minutemen. 4.9 yards per carry, Chris. You had him ranked 8th. JR and I did not have him ranked. However, he was like my honorable mention or my number 11 guy,
Yeah.
just on the outside looking in. Being at Michigan State is interesting in my opinion here, because this is a new coach, a new scheme, a whole new set, offense that we're looking at here for Sparty moving forward. But this is a guy who can tote the rock. He's got some tread left on those tires. He didn't use it all up over there in Massachusetts. This is someone you need to keep your eye on, I would say, in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I like him a lot, and I think a 10's a good spot for him, honestly. He's a guy who, like you said, can tote the rock, but we don't know just how well because he played at UMass. However, being at Sparty, like you said, new coach, new system, but this is one thing. It's still the Big Ten. You're still going to have to run the rock. And I think this guy's going to get a lot of opportunity up there for Sparty. So number 10, I think, is a good slot for him.
All right, moving on to number 9. Nicholas Singleton from Penn State. He is the first of a pair of Nittany Lions that made the top 10 this year. 752 yards at 4.4 yards per carry. Did not live up to that sophomore hype that a lot of us were expecting. However, he's in a kind of a shared carry situation
Hmm.
in Happy Valley, and we all kind of agreed he's not the big dog in the backfield. He's kind of the second guy in that backfield for the Nittany Lions in 2024. You had him ranked 10th. I had him ranked ninth. Or excuse me, JR had him ranked ninth, and I had him unranked. Um, this is one guy who I could see falling out of the top 10 based off of how his counterpart does there, or his running mate. However, if for some reason his running mate were to get injured, this guy's stock could definitely rise.
Yeah, agreed. Two big things he had working against him. One, he was not great in the big games last year. It seemed to be that Katron, his running mate, was a little bit more productive in the big games. But the other thing is, Eric, Penn State's offensive line was just awful last year.
Not good.
So this year, he has a new opportunity. But like you said, he's not the big dog over there right now. But he could provide a nice change of pace.
Yeah, I like him as a backup. I really do.
I do too.
But we'll see what happens there. But he's in the top 10 on this list, so he made the top 10. So given the fact that there's 18 teams now, and you're not even the number one guy on your own team, and you still made the top 10, is kind of impressive if you think of it in those terms.
It is. He's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of natural ability, Eric. The question is just, can he live up to it?
Yep. All right, here's where we're about to make everybody who hates this podcast hate us even more. At number 8, we've got Donovan Edwards. Yes, he graces the cover of this year's EA Sports college football game. However, we only have him as the 8th best running back in the Big Ten. Now, some might think we're crazy, but hear us out. He did not have a tremendous year last year. He
No.
battled the injury bug last year. 497 total yards, only 5 TDs, 4.2 yards per carry. Did have 249 yards receiving, which is pretty good. Chris had him ranked 9th. You have him ranked 9th, Chris. JR and I both had him ranked 7th. That averages out to the number 8th best in the Big Ten this year. Here's the other thing. That offensive line has been reworked quite a bit. Now, Sharon Moore, the new head coach over there in Ann Arbor, was a former offensive line coach, Chris. So
Yep.
you would think that if there's when the head coach is used to coaching the upfront offensive line, and he's adapted the whole quote unquote smash theology that they keep talking about there in Ann Arbor, that if he's able to hold up, Donovan Edwards' numbers obviously are going to be much better in 2024. Are they going to be good enough for that team up north to compete for a Big Ten title and to get back into the college football playoff? We shall see. I say no.
I agree. And we have yet to see what Sharon Moore actually does as a real head coach when he doesn't have the magic clipboard there to help him out. But you know what? The other thing you got to look at is they took a big step backwards in at the running back coach position. So will that have an impact on Edwards as well?
Yeah, yeah. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. All right, number 7, we're going to head back to Happy Valley. Here's where we have Katron Allen. Chris, you had him ranked 6th. JR had him all the way up into the top 5 at 4th. I had him all the way down at 8th. That averages out to 7th this year in the Big Ten. Had 902 yards last year, 6 touchdowns, 281 yards receiving. Was the best option for James Franklin in the biggest games. No doubt about it. If I'm James Franklin, when it comes to running the football in 2024, I'm handing the football to number 13 at least 80% of the time.
Yeah, and this is the thing. If I thought he was getting 80% of the carries, I might have had him in the top 5 because I believe he has top 5 talent. But he is still in a shared backfield. James Franklin, especially in big games, honestly can't get out of his own way most of the time. So I feel like Allen isn't going to quite get the number of carries or possibly the carries and the right opportunities to put him over that 1,000-yard mark. So I couldn't see putting him in to the top 5.
And the other thing is, I think that there's definitely going to be a dedication to make sure that they try to get Drew Allers in the passing game going in the right
Yes,
direction in 2024. So, how much of that's going to steal away from?
that's going to take some of their carries, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, and we've highlighted it now multiple times that the offensive line is not the greatest
It's
over
just
there at
not.
Penn State. All right, number 6. This might be, to me, this is a surprise, but maybe not for you. Darius Taylor, Minnesota. 799 yards last year, 5.8 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. Coming off an injury, I think is the highlight that you and JR were looking at. You had him at
Yeah,
7th. JR had him at 6th or 8th. I can't tell. The print's so small there. I had him all
that's
the way up. I had him all the way up to 3rd. I love this kid's game. If he's healthy, there is no doubt about it. This is a top 5, if not a top 4 back in the Big Ten. He
mhm.
will. I'm going to make a statement here, and I can't wait to talk to our friends over at the Sky U Pod. As he goes, Minnesota goes this year. That's that's
Agreed.
that's how I feel about Darius Taylor.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm with you. I think the guy's got top 3 or 4 talent, absolutely. It's just coming off the injury. I couldn't put him that high.
All right, so definitely keep your eye on him and his health this
Mm-hmm.
summer and heading into the season. Again, I think a lot for Minnesota is riding on him carrying the football. All right, now let's get into the top five. Chris, this is where I had to kind of say you guys are right. You guys are right. Jordan James from Oregon. Now, as you can see, Chris, you had him right here at number
Mm-hmm.
five. JR was incredibly disrespectful, in my opinion, having him at eighth, and I had him way too high at first. Okay. So I think JR and I kind of wash each other out here,
Yeah,
and you are dead on where he probably is. When you talk potential, I think
huge
Jordan
potential.
I think Jordan James could be a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what he did last year in a limited role.
Mm-hmm.
107 carries, 359 yards, 7.1 yards per carry, and 11 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, the guy got over 750 yards with just over 100 carries. That's phenomenal. And he is tremendous in the passing game and the limited opportunities he got. Eric, the guy definitely has top three talent, without a doubt. But I'm just not 100% sold when you extrapolate that out over a full season that we're going to see that same type of production
If
as the
Oregon,
workhorse.
sure, if Oregon is who I think they are, and they are neck and neck with Ohio State as the best team in the Big Ten, right along with us, and last year's any indication, given an additional workload, I believe Jordan James is going to be mentioned in the same breath as the best backs in the Big Ten with Travion Henderson, Quinshawn Judkins, and the next two guys we'll mention here in a minute. So I don't want to ruin it for all of
Right.
y'all. But there's no reason to believe that Jordan James can't leapfrog maybe a couple of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. But I will agree, Chris. You're right. I had him way too high, but I will also say JR has him way too low.
I
It's a
agree.
wash. I think this is where he belongs.
No, I agree with you. I think this is the right spot for him until he proves it over the season.
All right. So the next one is also incredibly interesting because this is another one of those transfer guys
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to a team where you're kind of like, this could be interesting. We're talking about number 4, Jonah Coleman, Washington, coming over from Arizona, follows his head coach from the Arizona Wildcats to the Washington Huskies up there in the Northwest. 871 yards on 128 carries for 6.8 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns last year, 283 yards receiving. Was a dynamic weapon for the Wildcats last year in what is a very dynamic offense.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the question, and this is a question that you could almost ask about our previous running back at number 5 for Oregon. How much of these stats have to do with the fact that they played in a conference last year in the Pac 12 where the defenses are very much Ole?
Well, I'll
And
tell
they're,
you what. Ask Lincoln Riley because Lincoln Riley just comes out and says, "Hey, we're going to destroy the Big Ten. They're not used to playing the teams we played in the Pac-12." Yeah, yeah, that's right. He's an idiot.
well, if you look at bowl season, he's incredibly wrong. How many times have the Pac-12 gone up against the Big Ten teams and they've struggled to score nearly as the amount of points, and then they lose by a score or two because the Big Ten defenses are just that much more stout. Um, if he's going to be, I think, in for a very rude awakening
Yeah, I agree.
when Iowa's hanging 30 points on him because his defense is that bad, and Iowa's not going to let him score more than two scores.
If
I mean, it's a
yeah,
completely such a clash of styles. So that being said, I'm incredible. One of the things I can't wait to watch, Chris, is how Washington will adjust to the Big Ten, and how they adjust with an entirely new coach and new scheme.
well, I'll tell you this is what I do think about Washington. You had mentioned when we originally did this show that you were concerned maybe about how many touches he would actually get, given the fact that they could be behind in a lot of games.
Hmm.
This is a coach who he's a run first guy. He's got his guy over there with him. And in the Big Ten, you got to be able to run the rock, and I think this guy can do it. And more than anything, is yes, they may be from behind or playing from behind a bit, but if they can control the clock and stay with teams, especially with the way the clock runs now,
Yeah.
this is a team that may not have to turn to the passing game as soon as you think. So I really feel like this guy is going to have a tremendous season. Would not be surprised at all to see him exceed 1,000 yards this season. I really believe he belongs in that top four group.
All right, now we're gonna get to the top three. If there's a guy who's my guy who doesn't wear scarlet and gray, it's this guy, and of course I'm talking about number three, Kyle Monangai.
Yes.
Um, Dude, flat out, almost single-handedly beat the Buckeyes last year in
Yes.
Piscataway, New Jersey. If not for a tremendous fluky pick six that happened,
Yeah.
if if they would have just turned around and continued to hand this guy the football, there's a very good chance that Ohio State loses that game to Rutgers last year. Um, Kyle Monangai is going to wreck some defenses this year. He wrecked them last year. I'm looking at you, USC. I think that is one of my big highlight it, mark it down. People aren't talking about it.
Hmm.
Rutgers is going out to LA and they're going to shock USC this year.
Rutgers may legitimately be a 9 to 10 win team this year, Eric.
I
They
wouldn't go
really could.
10 wins yet, but I would say, looking at their schedule, 9 is achievable.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a team that is going to be a good team. And don't be surprised when you hear this man's name mentioned in the Heisman race because he is that good. I truly believe that, you know, he led the Big Ten last year, and I think he'll do even more this year.
Yeah, had over
And
1,200 yards, 8 scores. I'm looking at probably double-digit touchdowns on the ground this year.
yeah, and they've got a
Some
better passing game to take some of that pressure off of him.
They actually have a quarterback who can throw, and I think
Yeah.
that was last year. They were so one-dimensional as an offense.
And he still had these numbers.
Yes, exactly. You had him at third. JR had him third. I had him fourth. He ends up being third in this list. Kyle Monangai, keep your eye on him. I would not be surprised if we're not putting him in at the end of the year as the first team All Big Ten, given the fact who we have at the next two and what I'm going to predict for the next two guys. So Kyle Monangai, number three. All right, number two, Chris. Another transfer, Quinshon Judkins. Now, let's talk about this for a minute because you and I are going to disagree about this. Chris, you had him ranked second,
Mhm.
which is where he's located. JR had him first. I had him all the way down at sixth. I just don't think Judkins is going to get the amount of carries to justify him being the number two, number one, number three running back in the entire conference. Now, here's why. He has been a workhorse the first two
Mhm.
seasons um, for Lane Kiffin down there in Ole Miss.
Yes.
Last year, 1,158 yards, 15 touchdowns. That's great. 149 receiving yards and a pair of scores. Um, he intentionally came to Ohio State to lower his carry number. I think he wants to be somewhere around the 175
Mhm.
mark. I don't even know if he's going to reach that because I have a prediction coming up in just a minute that I think you're going to like and the listeners are going to like. But that being said, I understand why you guys have him this high because I'm not so sure overall he's not the best back in the conference complete game overall.
Hmm. And here's the thing, Eric. I can see what you're saying, and as I've thought, I've reflected on this list a little bit too. I can see him being a guy that only wants 8 to 10 carries, maybe 11 carries a game. Um, Originally, I was thinking him somewhere around 14, 15, but I can see him in the 8 to 10 category, and he's going to get those carries. This is what I'll predict. I think he leads Ohio State in rushing touchdowns because I believe he's going to get a lot of those goal line opportunities because he's the bigger, more physical back. Um, but I could see where, honestly, had I redone this list after really breaking it down and thinking, I probably drop him to 3 and have Monangai up at 2. Um, but yeah, I can see where your argument's coming from. I wouldn't have him as low as 6. I just can't put him that low. Um, but I could see him being that third or fourth guy if he does limit himself to 10 carries or less per game and just goes out there and is like, a goal line, tough yardage back and occasionally breaks one off.
Let me Penn State this thing for you. If Travion ends up getting hurt or continues to deal with injuries and Quinshawn becomes the every down back, he's probably number 1 on this list.
Absolutely.
So, it's just projecting him to there is hard for me when I express what I'm going to express with all of you about Travion in a minute. So that's Quinshawn Judkins at number 2. Could end up at number 1, but given his situation, it's hard for me to put him in
But
the top 5.
but Eric, I would say this: if and you may touch on this, but if he limits himself to those 8 to 10 carries a game, look out for the next guy to be right there with Monangai in the Heisman talk.
And that's what I want to talk about.
Go ahead.
Number 1, TreVeyon Henderson. I went back earlier today since I didn't go to church because I'm healing up from my uh, kidney stones. And I went back this morning and I rewatched the spring game. And I didn't make it out of the preview of the spring game because something caught my attention that I completely missed, Chris. And that was the quote from Jack Sawyer that said, and they were talking about all these seniors who came back, and TreVeyon Henderson is one of them. And his quote was, "We have one more chance to do this and beat those guys." Talking about the team up north. TreVeyon Henderson, I think, has a giant chip on his shoulder.
Oh, I'm sure.
He's not been healthy, truly healthy,
Since he was a
since his
freshman.
freshman
Yeah.
season. And he had the single greatest freshman rushing season in Ohio State history. And that includes breaking Archie Griffin's freshman records. And then 2022 happened, and 2023 happened, and this man has never been right. He is right now. He's right as rain. He's healthy. He's 100%. He's in a good place mentally. He's talked a lot about where he's at mentally this offseason. 926 yards in 5.9 yards per carry and 11 touchdowns is a good season. And it was bad for him.
You know what stuck out to me? You talk about a chip on his shoulder. Last year, or at the end of the previous season, when he was struggling with all the injury things, and there was some blame being thrown around. I got to tell you, I was surprised when he came back for this season. I wonder how much of that blame goes to the guy who's the running back coach at Michigan right now.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think he's Travion's the type of person he's not going to throw Tony Alford under the bus. Tony Alford would throw him under the bus because he's obviously that kind of person.
Yeah.
I have zero respect for Tony Alford at this point.
But you think about it, this was a guy who I really thought was going to go pro, even after not having the best season, just because of his measurables, because of the style of game he plays, and because I felt like he was a little hurt by
Hmm.
what had occurred.
Yeah, hurt
But
emotionally. Yeah,
emotionally, but the fact that he came back tells me A, he's got some things he wants to accomplish, but also
right.
B, I don't think it was Ryan Day who was the one who hurt him emotionally.
Mm,
You know,
right. Travion has Heisman potential
absolutely,
if he starts to put up crazy numbers. 7.5, 7 yards per carry. He's breaking off 2 to 3 touchdowns a game. One or two of them are really long, 30 plus yards, right?
Quinshawn may
Um,
become more limited than he wanted to be.
exactly. That's my exact point. And if this Chip Kelly run scheme that everybody's talking about is as effective as we think it possibly could be, there is a world that exists where Travion Henderson is a Heisman candidate in 2024.
Absolutely.
And if that happens, and I hope it does, that is why I cannot put Quinshawn Judkins as high as number 2 on this list. However, I get it. He's there, and I understand his talent. However, if things are so good offensively that this guy's getting no carries at all in the second half, and Quinshawn's taking some of those second half carries against a beat up, tired defense, then he's going to have huge numbers too.
Absolutely.
So it could be a win win. However, I think when you look at all the running backs that we just talked about, next to Manungai, this guy's got the best chance to win the Heisman from that position in this conference.
Oh, I agree. And this is the thing. Um, we have legitimately, I think, three guys who have the chance to compete, and it just depends on the direction which Ryan Day takes this offense and Chip Kelly takes this offense. Because if we go run heavy, this guy is a definite candidate. If we still stay more balanced, or if we go a little more towards the pass, obviously we got some tremendous receivers. And if we're leaning on the pass as well, that also means that Will Howard's probably having a pretty good season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going to put it out there. We got three guys who I think are legitimate contenders before the season starts.
Hmm.
That's going to change once we see how Chip Kelly and Ryan Day decide to run this offense.
So there's our list. That's our top 10 running backs heading into the season in the Big Ten. I can hear it now. We're going to see it in the comments. Uh,
Homers.
the Buckeye guys put two Buckeyes at the top 2 in this list. I get it. Yep, you're absolutely right. We did.
Ask the
Um,
SEC if Judkins belongs there.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, Chris. Please like, share, subscribe. It really does help us channel out. Ring the bell. You'll get notified every time we drop one of these 2024 Big Ten season previews for you. Not only are we going to break down every position by doing a top 10 in every position, we're going to have our first team and second team all OHIO podcast Big Ten selections as we get real close to the season. Plus, we're going to start our two a days 2 weeks earlier, which means
What is that
we've
about
got
next week or week after next? We're going to
week
start two
after.
days.
We have 9 weeks straight of two Big Ten previews per week for you, and we will bring on other podcasters who also cover their team just like we do with the Buckeyes. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to predict schedules. We're going to predict records. We're going to tell you how those teams are going to do. We're going to tell you why those teams are going to be good. We're going to tell you why those teams might be bad. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I will say, last year we were very accurate, except for one team. One team we got really wrong last year. Do you remember who?
Uh, Northwestern.
Bingo.
Yeah, because we were coming out of the Patty Fitz incident.
None of us, none of us predicted Northwestern would be any good at all. We all thought they would be barely get 2 wins on the
Yeah, we
season.
struggled at one point to actually find them a win in the
And
midst of all that. And
but
then,
even the Wild Chat agreed that they're probably not going to be that good. And then they had a
yeah,
phenomenal season, which if they're going to follow the Patty Fitz model, that means this year they're going to underachieve.
I don't know. I got a good feeling about this guy over there at Northwestern,
Yeah.
Eric.
All
I
right.
think that he's got the ability to be solid. You know, it's Northwestern. They're never gonna really
They don't even have a
compete
home
now that
field. That's what's
well,
crazy.
and once that now that the divisions are gone, let's face it, they're not going to compete for a Big Ten title. But you know what? They're a team that can be a bowl team
We'll see.
pretty
We're gonna
consistently.
that we'll save that for when we get there and we talk
Yeah,
the Westlot Pirates. They're a lot of fun. That's the college huddle Northwestern affiliate that we are associated with. So, all right, guys. So again, like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, get notified when we drop these previews. We're gonna do another. We'll have another position group for you next week that Chris and I will break down along with Jr. Also, we'll start with those team previews very very soon, so be on the lookout for that as well. We go live every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. for our roundtable discussion. We also do a live call-in show every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as well, unless one of us can't make it, or even when I had kidney stones, Chris, you pulled it solo. You did well,
yeah,
brother.
we
You
did
did
all right.
well.
Shout
Well,
shout shout out to our callers because they kept it going. Let
there
me
you
tell you.
go. So if we don't do it on Thursday because of work schedule for me this week, never fear. We'll probably do a Friday night thing. I might fly solo. I know Chris has got some stuff going on this week, but I'm feeling better. We're all doing good. So again, thank you so much for watching, and be on the lookout for these previews. We love doing them for you, and we're excited for the 2024 season. Until next time, OH.
I O.
Go Bucks.